It's about 5:34, and we have about 20 steering committee members. We're still missing 6, but I think we're okay to get started.
All right, perfect. Well, good evening, everyone. It is nice to see some of your faces and to see some of your names for those who aren't on camera. Feel free to join us on camera if you'd like, and if you prefer not to, totally get that. I get it. I've been on Zoom since probably about 6:30 this morning, so I know what Zoom fatigue can do to folks. Just a couple of quick things. Obviously, the elephant in the room is I am not Dr. Tyler. She is way better looking than I am, and just much more amazing, if I have to say so myself. So you get to settle for, me. I'm not too bad. So, but first and foremost, Dr. Tyler definitely wanted me to express just her appreciation to all of you. Some of the calls and emails that she received, she just really appreciated those and wanted me to express that. Before we get started formally tonight, just a couple of things. Many of you know each other. Some of you don't. We also have the public viewing with us. So if you wouldn't mind in the chat putting your name and affiliation in the chat so people know who you are, that would be great. And if you look in the chat also, our agenda for this evening is there. I'll review that shortly, and we will get going. I want to say thank you to all of you for being here. And I really want to express my gratitude at the opportunity to do this work with you. The work that you're doing is not easy work. It's complex work. It's important work. And it's work that many of you are doing after already working a 10 or 12-hour day, being with children, being in community, doing other things. And so it's a really big deal that you're here, and just want to take a moment to say thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up for community. Thank you for believing in voice. And thank you for engaging in processes like this, because it's really important that we do those things. So for tonight, we've got a pretty aggressive agenda. Obviously, we'll start. You'll hear a little bit more about me, and then we will go into a discussion on the community input from the first open house. And so we'll hear from you, get your thoughts on that. Then we will have the Community Navigator's engagement report. So first we'll have a summary presentation by James Roy and Marcus Pope. And then we will, from there, go into some discussion around that. You have the opportunity to ask some questions and get further information on that. From there, we'll go into preliminary draft results. Then we'll have an opportunity for public comment, where public will be on and be able to ask you guys some questions, or not ask you some questions, but give you guys some comments to consider. It looks like we have 14 individuals who have signed up for tonight, and so we'll follow the standard process. Folks will have about 2 minutes for recommendation, or 2 minutes for comments, and then we'll move into the final part of the evening. We'll get into the chartering discussion, and we'll wrap up. Does that sound like that works for everybody? That agenda sound like what you received? Get a thumbs up. That works. Great. Awesome. Well, I'm going to share my screen very quickly as we get our night going here. So again, just a little bit about me. I just want to give a quick introduction of me and kind of who I am and why I'm here. First and foremost, I'm a Denver native. My children are actually 7th generation Coloradans. Their grandparents actually got to Colorado 2 years before we were a state, so in some like 1874 or something like that. So big Colorado history. I grew up in East Denver, actually not very far from the Park Hill Golf Course. Grew up at 28th and Monroe Street, and so have had the opportunity to go to the golf course for a variety of things, for events, to play golf, to eat, to have libations with friends, all of those things. So familiar with the area. Professionally, I'm an educator. I've been in education for a little over 20 years. I serve as the Chief Diversity Officer and the Chief Student Affairs Officer for the Colorado Community College system. Excuse me. And in addition to that, I have a small consulting boutique called Stirred Up Enterprises. And through Stirred Up Enterprises, I do facilitation, motivational speaking, training around leadership, diversity, equity, and inclusion. On the screen, here's some of the organizations that I've had the opportunity to work with. And all of these organizations I've worked with as a consultant. So you'll be able to, you can see the different places that I've had different places and people I've had an opportunity to work with, some local, some national. One of the things that I spent a lot of my time doing is working with the Urban Leadership Foundation of Colorado. It's an organization designed to provide leadership development and civic engagement for emerging and arriving leaders of color. And so we have a 10-month leadership program, and I have the honor of facilitating that and leading that organization. Done a lot of different things and done some consulting for the 5 Points Development Corporation. Just really important for transparency that I bring that up to let you all know that my time there was short, and it was as a consultant, not as an employee. There may have been a misunderstanding about that, but I had the opportunity there to bring community very similar to this together in 5 Points to talk about development and some of the plans that were happening there, and making sure that the community knew what was happening, and then also do some youth programming. Did a big back to school bash there a few years ago in the summer of 2018. So that's a little bit about me. I think what's most important is my role here. My role is to be a facilitator, right? And for me, what that means is I'm here to join you on a journey, right? But it's my job to help, provide information, guide our conversation, keep us on track. It's not to tell you what to think or how to think. It's not to tell you what to do or how to do it. And it's not to make any decisions. You have the amazing task of coming up with recommendations that will be shared. I have the amazing opportunity to support you in that process. So that's just a little bit about me. I'm available via email. I think you all have it. And so if you need to hear from me or you need to follow up with me, if you ever need anything, just shoot me an email. And if you prefer text message or calling, shoot me an email first, and I'll provide a number for you to reach me directly, so we can make sure that you are good. Any questions about me?
I missed all of your introduction.
Oh man, well that means you get the homework assignment. You have to call me tomorrow and listen to the full story, everything from the time I was born at St. Joseph Hospital to yesterday.
I can do that.
Well, all right. Well, cool. Well, it's a pleasure, and again, I'm really excited to be doing this work with you guys, and I really, really express my appreciation for the work that you're doing. It's vital. It's vital, and it's important, and it's complex, and it's not easy, and it takes real citizens and real authentic leaders and community folks to engage in this kind of work. So thank you again. We're gonna jump right into community input from our community open house number 1, the first community open house that you guys had. Looks like from what I understand, everybody had an opportunity to participate in that. And so just kind of wanted to open the floor and get your thoughts on that. was it well attended? You know, did you learn from it? You know, would you, you know, there's going to be additional open houses coming up in the future. Would you like to see anything different? Just want to get your initial thoughts and responses. And so at this point, just want to open it up and see what you think. All right.
Well, I'll go first.
Thank you, Jermaine.
No
How you
problem.
doing?
I'm all right, man. I'm blessed. I'm breathing.
All right.
I like the simple things in life. Basically, I've been on multiple discussions, and I'm a resident of Park Hill as well. So in my past, I was told, as far as all the different ideas that were being shared with the community of what is going to become of the Park Hill Golf, I mean, not of the Park Hill Golf Course, but of things that were going on in Park Hill. I want to go back to when the King Supers was supposed to be in the Dahlia, or how they were going to redevelop the Dahlia. And we see what happens to that as well. As far as for the golf course, I really feel like it is a desert, but it's opportunity for things to happen that can create equity, jobs, life changes for people, such as schools, restaurants, stores, affordable housing, things of that nature. And in that or whatnot, I feel that there's been a lot of broken promises to the neighborhood, especially the people who like me, were raised there, where I was thinking about grabbing a job at the King Supers, and, you know, as a young boy trying to make some money, going to Skyland and having an after school program. As far as like in the Dahlia, you had the Dahlia Library. For continuation, I could go across the parking lot and get a suit, whether it was for school or for continuation. Point is that we had opportunities that we could walk to and not ask our parents to drive us to. Right now, the closest thing as far as grocery stores is Quebec. That's a mean hike for a child or kid, or that needs to just go get some milk or some fruit for the parents because they're trying to complete their breakfast or their dinner. So little things like that really do matter. My first record was bought in the Dahlia Shopping Center. Let It Whip, Daz Band.
That's cool. I appreciate that, Jermaine. We're gonna look like we got some hands up of other folks who were at the open house on March 25th and want to get your reactions as well. Let's go. We're gonna go to Fred and then to looks like is it Sandria? So let's go with Fred first, and then Sandria. And I apologize if I mispronounced your name.
Thanks, Dr. Ross. You know, I guess one of the I was frustrated after the open house. I'm here, and I think many of my co-members of the committee are here to have a genuine, difficult, but a genuine conversation. And frankly, I felt like an awful lot of the open house and an awful lot of the public participation was an effort to discredit the process and to shut the conversation down. And I see that from, you know, there's some groups out there that's their interest. They don't seem to be interested in having the conversation. They don't feel that the conversation should even be had. We're here, we're giving our time to have the conversation. I remain concerned about those who just want to shut it down and don't want to have the conversation. I think that's silencing a lot of voices in the community. And I think that's unfortunate. And I think in equity terms, it's pretty disappointing.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's Andrea.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. I never go on camera because my Zoom is a little funky.
That's
So
okay.
I never want you guys to not be able to hear me. So, and I go by Sandy, but Sandrea is perfectly fine, and I thank you for that. One of the comments, or some of the feedback that I received and heard from community was kind of the frustration of there not being enough time for actual community engagement. It really was more of an opportunity to hear certain speakers, and there really wasn't a lot of time for community voices. And not specifically ours on the steering committee, but literally those like our attendees, our 69 attendees this evening. So I think Dr. Mosby Kyler was certainly trying to move in the direction where she wanted to offer time for public comment, which is something that we're going to see tonight. But I think that was one of the commentaries that I saw a lot with the first open house. And another commentary that I noticed was that all of the panelists really seemed to be focused, and they were all mostly city employees or somehow engaged by CPD. And I've heard people say that they would like to hear other voices and other sides of the issue, and not just the presentation specifically from the CPD or those who might seem development friendly. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. And Shanta.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Ross. So I have to say I was a little frustrated with the meeting too, and it's kind of along the lines that Fred Glick touched on, but the opposite of what he said. So there are those on this committee and members of the public that are not necessarily pro-development. And there are also those of us who feel like there are some conflicts of interest going on in various areas of this process. And so it feels as though, those of us who speak up in favor of open space and, alternative solutions to this process are being accused of wanting to derail the process just because we're speaking a different opinion. And I don't think that that's fair. Just because we're speaking a different opinion and that we're not necessarily pro-development doesn't mean that we're trying to derail this process. We're just trying to have our voices heard. And if there is going to be true equity in this, I think that all voices and all opinions need to be considered. And also you have to consider the fact that, having lack of green space is also a way of a community being underserved. So I think all points of view need to be considered, and just recognize that, we're all here to do the right thing by our communities. Just because we have a different opinion doesn't mean that we don't care about this community and what happens to it. I think that's just the opposite. We do care, and we want to protect the integrity of the community and not have it fall into the hands of someone who really just wants to make money. And so I think that, like I said, all viewpoints need to be considered, and it just needs to be equitable and fair. And that's pretty much my opinion.
Well, thank you. Yeah, those are all very good comments. Thank you for sharing. And the whole point in a process like this is voice and making sure that people have access. And that's definitely my commitment to you is that everybody is heard through this process, and we encourage you all to definitely exercise that exercise your voice. It's really,
Yes,
really important to be heard.
Thank you so much.
Are there any final kind of thoughts or reactions to the March 25th open house if you were there?
Yes.
All right.
I think it's important that we use some common sense logic
Mm-hmm.
and be equitable and fair. If we're not equitable and fair, then we're gonna have an issue. It's gonna be a problem. And when we look at the history of Northeast Park Hill, we know what happened. We know the history. We know the history of gentrification, racism, redlining. We can go on and on and on.
Yeah.
So now we're dealing with the Park Hill Golf Course. And there are good developers and not so good developers. We know this. But we have an opportunity now with this particular development, and I'm the imam of the mosque that's just a half a block away from the golf course. We have opportunity to revigorate and revitalize our neighborhoods. I think that we should take advantage of it and make it a neighborhood that is inclusive to all ethnic backgrounds. And I think what has been presented in terms of multi-layered approach, which would include grocery store, affordable housing, 60 acres of open space, restaurant, maybe a bowling alley or a skating rink, and attainable affordable housing and market rate. I mean, that's just the start of it. Daycare center, etc. All of these things is what's needed in the community.
All right.
And so I think that's a balance.
Right.
People who say they want open space, if you're giving them open space, 60 acres, that's almost the size of what the park, what's the park over there?
Yeah. So Imam,
Hmm?
Imam, I appreciate that, and those are really good points. I want to keep us on schedule, and you know, and there'll definitely be some time to talk about that in general, but I wanted to focus those reactions to actual comments and process on the 25th. So I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to keep us going because you'll definitely have an opportunity to have those particular facts heard. So we're going to shift, and thank you to everybody who attended the open house and had comments on it. And as always, if there are other thoughts about it, you know, don't hesitate to shoot an email to myself or Courtney, and we'll capture that information for you. But we're going to shift gears just a little bit and go into the Community Navigator report. It looks like you guys have had a few opportunities to hear from James Roy about the design of the project and what it looks like. And tonight he's here to give about a 10-minute summary presentation over what happened. And then we're going to open it up for about 25-30 minutes if we need that much time to have some discussion. So at this time, James, you and Marcus ready?
Yep, I'm ready. Has Marcus been made a panelist yet?
Yes, sir.
Cool.
I'm on. Yep.
Oh, cool. Hey, Marcus.
Yeah,
All right. So my name is James Roy. I'm the executive director of Denver Metro Community Impact. This is Marcus Pope. He's the owner of House of Hair Barbershop. Marcus, you could do an introduction real quick yourself, of course.
Cool. Yeah. Thank y'all for having us. I've been the owner of House of Hair Barbershop located in the Park Hill community. I've been here since 2003, and so established the shop here at 2 different locations, and just had the opportunity to partner and work alongside James Roy and DMCI with the sense of community involvement and community engagement, with the unique understanding of the barbershop being a place of community. And so we've kind of been fortunate to use that opportunity to, leverage the barbershop community in a place where exchange of interest, concern, and community focal points have been discussed and shared and exchanged. So that's been my involvement here for since 2003. and since 2014 at the Fairfax location.
Thanks, Marcus. So yeah, Marcus was one of the community navigators making the work happen. And so without him, all of this work would not have been possible. So I want to dive into the Navigator report and, just kind of what we found from it and our reflections and challenges and things like that. I'm going to start off the presentation. Marcus is going to wrap us up with the results of it. So everyone can see what I see, right? Got the community voice report on there. Cool. All right, so let's go over a little bit of an outline. The first part, I'm gonna tell you where to find the full report. It's on our website. That's the next slide. You'll be able to check that out, and download it if you want, read the whole thing, whatever you need to do. The second part that we're gonna go through is just a little overview of the Community Navigator stuff, just to refresh on it. I know everyone's heard about it like 2 or 3 times by now from different presentations. Third, we're going to talk about the methodology that DMCI used to process the data. And then the demographics versus the actual engagement. So the community demographics within the half mile of the site, as well as our, how we actually engaged with those demographics. The next part, we're going to go through the data analysis and the results. And that's where Marcus will really get into it and talk about the top discussion themes and topics that came out of a lot of the talks about the golf course. And lastly, I'll wrap it up by talking about the challenges and lessons learned from this pilot project. Now, of course, I want everybody to remember this was a pilot and that there's a lot of kinks to iron out, but I think we did a pretty good job in identifying where those kinks are that we need to work on, but also how we're going to be able to continue to make projects like this successful. So the report can be found at our website, dmcimpact.org/phgc. And I think it was also a draft of it was sent to the steering committee as well. So you probably have a little bit of an older version if Dr. Ross sent that out, but you can see the newest version right there at that link. And then we'll also be, if there's any glaring things that we need to address about it after today, we'll keep that link updated and make sure that it has the most up-to-date information regarding the presentation and the report itself. So just a quick overview about what the navigators were, what the project is. The overarching goal of the project was to engage the harder to reach populations around the Park Hill Golf Course, to focus on African American, Latinx, seniors, youth, and renters. The responsibilities of each of the community navigators, which were community contractors really, that worked with DMCI to share project info, collect and track feedback, communicate back and forth with us, organize 2 of the talks that they had. So that was 16 total, and you'll see that later in the presentation as well too. And then also a new side of things where we were doing the one-on-one community conversations that really gave even more of a platform for people to be able to speak their voice even outside of the community meeting setting. Each community navigator was targeted to hold about 16 of those one-on-one conversations throughout the community, and then also present the findings to the steering committee. So that's what Marcus is doing right now, leading that effort for us. So to talk about the methodology, we used a thematic qualitative analysis for this, which involved 4 steps. Step 1 was really looking at the notes and the audio transcriptions of each meeting, and coding it down into different topics, which is step 2. Step 3 was generating and reviewing the different themes around and analyzing the patterns that were recognized within that data. And then step 4 is the write-up and analysis that we've presented through the report. For the demographics versus the actual engagement, this is something that I'll return to on our reflections and lessons learned. here. On the left side of this component, well, actually on the top bar right here, you see that there's about 10,000 people within a half mile of the golf course. We engaged around 225 community members and had around 101 one-on-one conversations and 16 community talks with 8 to 12 attendees at each. On the for how we broke down on the engaging the racial demographic of the neighborhood, we have you can see on this graph 32% Latinx population, 31% white population, 28% Black population is the main makeup there. And the way that we engaged, which this was an optional question to answer, by the way, I want to let everyone know that. So you could see that we engaged 225 people. There were 39 responses in this. So that's something to really be aware of there. But within those responses, 67% of them were represented as Black, 21% represented as white. I think, you know, based off of our, you know, just kind of what we saw there, I think that was actually pretty close to the way that we actually engaged as well too. And this one, you've got a lot going on this slide. I apologize. I was trying to squeeze in a lot here. But on the age demographics, you can see that it's not a complete comparison on the breakdown here, because there are different, you know, we collected the data differently than the census reports the data. There are 45 responses, and you can see that this graph is pretty similar to the one on the other side as far as how we did on age demographics. For income, we, you know, pretty similar breakout of incomes here, but you know, I think we missed the mark a little bit on our lower income populations and being able to make sure that those are represented in the data here. The other, we've got the rent versus own situation. We have in the community 48% owner occupied units, 52% renter occupied. Of what we engaged, we had 36% renter occupied respondents out of these 33, and 64 that were owner occupied. And the map that's above that, you can see the general heat map of where people lived residentially in the neighborhood as it related to their engagement. And the golf course, of course, right there in the middle, quarter-mile ring around it, and a half-mile ring, as well as a mile ring on that map. The places with the highest concentration of people were the yellow, lowest concentration blue. I would not, so yeah, that's that. And now we're moving into really kind of how, you know, within that engagement there, of those 225 people that we were able to speak to, what really arose out of those conversations. And Marcus is going to take over from here. And Marcus, if you need me to jump in at any point, just let me know.
All right, cool. Thanks, James. So yeah, a couple of things that I had a chance to be a part of engaging with allowed the chance to really get a lot of input centered around a few about 3 reoccurring themes, as you see listed on the screen, as well as a few other main topics of discussions that continue to come up in conversation in some of the different 16 community talks that we hosted, along with some of the one-on-ones that we did. So as you see listed on the screen, cited on the screen, there's a heavy emphasis on the theme of retail, open space, and housing. 66 times conversation was brought up on the interest and concern and lack thereof of retail opportunities for some of the small businesses. And you know, that was with an emphasis on some on bringing natural grocers, bringing in opportunity zones for small businesses, for minorities, for people of color, and a host of even, conversations centered on, since we hosted some things via the barbershop, many folks in the community were aware of our situation, the barbershop, and that was brought up along with the feeling of displacement, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And so retail shops, barbershops, salons that have been displaced or have experienced some displacement, such as ours. We were on 23rd and Kearney for, a number of years before I even acquired the shop. And we got kind of felt squeezed out of our lease as well. And so what's interesting, what we found in the conversations of retail concern is that whether these folks in these talks are residents or work in the area or play in the area of Park Hill, they too feel the pressure and feel the some of the snags of displacement when some of their establishments or retail shops that they frequent and patron get displaced. And so they feel that as a slight to them as well. And so that was just kind of an interesting find in, the 66 times that it was brought up. We also had 61 times it was brought up about the open space. Could that open space be utilized to engage community? Defining community, bringing a sense of community that has left a lot of folks that, again, live, work, and play in Park Hill. They felt, different levels of tensions and disconnect from their neighbors or from their neighborhood vendors or neighborhood shops that are new to the area. And so what can that space and utilizing an open space to reunite and reengage a sense of community? And then housing became also a pretty prominent topic of discussion with the emphasis on affordable housing, making, opportunity zones for first-time homeowners in one of the hottest area codes in the state. And so what catalyst can be used to try and leverage a use of nearly 160 acres to create some of those opportunities where, there were folks in some of the meetings that grew up in the area that just can't afford to no longer live in there. They might have went away to college, and as they came back, they just realized there's no way they could afford this zip code. So those were three of the very prominent themes that we were able to cite during some of these talks. Along with those, we also had very frequent, about 4 to 5 different top topics of discussion, which were, number one, over and over again, we constantly kept hearing the word community, the lack thereof community, or the lack of a sense of community, which we found, again, pretty interesting, because one of the things that many many folks that might frequent a barbershop, that's kind of like that's the man's country club area. It's its own private and public entity of community. And so wanting to see that sense of community expanded beyond your barbershops, beyond 1 or 2 houses on your block, and how can we create a better sense of community, leveraging some of the opportunities, space, acreage, and zoning that the golf course potentially may have. So that was a very prominent theme throughout those discussions.
Awesome.
Secondly,
oh no, I said awesome, and I just want to make sure that we save time for questions. So
okay, I'll speed up. All right. Secondly, Parks and Rec, open space. You see some of the quotes cited there. Some folks just, whether it was a public swimming pool, whether it was just an open space of, skate park, something that, again, can engage a lot of the young people. When you're engaging young people, you're engaging families. You've got families merging, kind of having that frequency in one space. Diversity and inclusion continued to be another recurring topic that was mentioned. Some of the families are feeling a disconnect between, again, this school, this side, this part of the boulevard, this part of the street, and just making sure that in the process of potential development, a strong sense of interest will be placed on diversity and inclusion with the potential development. Again, gentrification and displacement has been something that was felt, and residentially with some of the commercial retail establishments. Some of the some folks felt that they felt it, they've experienced it, and left a sour taste. And so seeking avoidance and seeking opportunity to steer free from trying to replay that whole process of displacement. That was another recurring topic. And then lastly, grocery and healthy foods. Just lacking the vendors, the grocers in the local area, be it the small convenience shops, just lacking some of the healthier food choices in the area. There's a few soul food spots, but juice bars were mentioned. Just creating space and opportunity for to bring a greater sense of healthy food choice and options were mentioned in top discussions. And then again, lastly, what opportunities will be created for existing, legacy, and new incoming small businesses to come and occupy and supply and meet some of the community demands from the retail side. I think that's it, Jane.
Yep, there we go. Well, thanks, Marcus. So yeah, that we wrapped up with, whoops, jumping around on this. Got 4 other topic discussions. One, the affordable housing came in at 7. Distrust of the developer in the city came in at number 8. 9 was open to the possibilities of the change, and 10 was aversion to density and development. For the challenges and lessons learned from this pilot project, we really reflected on being unsuccessful in engaging the Latinx population, as well as Clayton and the Elyria Swansea communities deeply. We did a pretty good job in Northeast Park Hill, but we really should have got a little bit better there. We were unable to maintain the neutral facilitation in every single meeting. So 2 of the meetings that we had were not used in our qualitative data because of their the way that they were facilitated. And then one of the things that contributed to those challenges, and I'll wrap this up very quickly, COVID-19 pandemic, of course, meeting online obviously presents some challenges, and the lack of being able to gather community in person. The lessons learned that will change, in the future is really putting an emphasis on navigator recruitment. That's vital to the success there. We need navigators that are deeply connected to the communities that we're trying to engage. And then lastly, we've got to continue to stress that neutral facilitation and how important it is for this consistent process and the data that we're trying to produce here. So that is it, and we can move on to questions and whatever else Dr. Ross would like to talk about.
Great, thank you guys for that information. We definitely have some questions from the committee here. Some are already in the comments. If you guys would go ahead and put your hands up, we'll go through the questions. I'm going to start over here in the comments until, well, actually, nope, I see hands already. So we're going to go at the hands, and if I see anything that's left out from the comments, I'll circle back to those. So let's start with Fred, then Sandy, and then Evelyn.
Thanks. I think my main question has to do with what happens from here. You mentioned that you described this as a pilot. Does that mean that there's a next phase to this? It's clear that there's some gaps in the data. I'm here to represent the Clayton RNO. We probably have a higher proportion of Latinx residents than most of the adjacent neighborhoods, except probably Elyria Swansea. And so that voice is particularly important as we as an RNO try to assess what our position will be. Is there going to be an effort to try and backfill some of that? I mean, now that things are changing with COVID, is there a chance that you can go out and start to do some more targeted knocking on doors, for example?
Yeah, you know, what I think that is up to, of course, the city, the process, and the steering committee, and exactly what we need to, you know, what type of information is going to be helpful to this process. And so, you know, being able to collect this at this time, I think has been extremely valuable. But yeah, you're right, Fred. I think, you know, going forward and being able to learn from, you know, the pilotness of this project is really learning from it and making sure that we apply, you know, apply those learnings in the future. The other thing I'd say is the reason why we're labeling it as a pilot is because this is the first time we've done a contract like this for the city. There's going to be, you know, the type of work that we do as DMCI is going to continue to have these types of qualitative data processes, regardless of who the client might be, for example, or the foundation or philanthropy that might be funding the work might be. And so we label this as a pilot because there's a lot of components to this that are still very new that we are testing out.
Sandy?
Thank you. So I have 3 questions, and I can either give them all to you at one time or ask them individually as you respond. But my first question is, with respect to the pilot, that does not necessarily mean, though, that the responses that were received are not going to be taken into consideration, right?
No, that does not mean that.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to confirm that, because the document that was sent to us did not give any indication that this was a pilot or anything to that effect.
Yeah, well, one of the,
Mhm.
sorry.
Go
One
ahead.
of the things I'd say to that as well is, you know, this is, I just lost my whole train of thought. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Maybe it'll come back.
Yeah, maybe.
So here's my second question. When I'm looking at your report, and I'm very confused by page 12 and then the subsequent pages. So if I look at page 12, for example, it says that open space was mentioned 61 times and housing was mentioned 60. But then if I go down into other pages, like for example, on page 14, it says parks and open space was mentioned 54 times. And if I go down to page, let's see, this would be page 16, it says that affordable housing was mentioned 30 times. So what is the differences between those numbers? They seem pretty extreme, but how do you explain the differences in those numbers? And then my final, go ahead.
Oh yeah, let me answer that. So yeah, we broke this up into topics and themes. So the themes that you see on page 12 are really those general things that could have fit into, you know, just being mentioned in any bucket, right? So for example, if someone said something about open space, they could have been talking on, if you're talking about on page 12, that could have been, you know, rec centers, that could have been parks, that could have been any, you know, a lot of different things that fit within that open space category there. When you get down into the topics, that's when we got more specific on what actually fit within those topics there. And so themes were a higher classification than the topics, and that's why you see open space as 61. Maybe we should have, you know, specified that a little bit more about what we mean on open space, and I tried to in the description there. But when you go down to you know, the topics section, that's when people got more specific about exactly what they wanted to see out of the site in general.
Yeah, I guess what I would just say, and what's confusing to me, is I should at least see numbers match up. Like if open space on page 12 says that it's mentioned 61 times, then I would expect to see 54 plus at least another 7 or 6 someplace else within the others. But nevertheless, okay, so
yeah, to answer that, these 10 that you see in the topics here are is not the complete set of data. So there's a lot of things that were, you know, a lot, you know, below the numbers or the threshold that we put onto the report. And so you'll notice that, yeah, the topics don't add up to what the themes are right now because they don't have every single data point on there.
Okay, and then my final question is, can you tell us, and I don't know if you're comfortable in telling us this, but can you tell us which of the Community Navigator meetings were disqualified?
No, out of respect for the community navigators, I'd like to not share that, but we were very clear about how to, in addressing that and making sure that, you know, the other meetings that happened after that were held and facilitated the correct way.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right, Evelyn?
Thank you so much for the report, James. And Marcus, it's so great to see you. Shout out to Sam, who used to cut my hair back when I was wearing a clean fade, and Brad Washington in the barbershop. I actually have two questions, which I think would be hopefully fairly quick to answer. And they might be more directed for you, Marcus, if you're still on, but James, feel free to chime in if it applies to you as well. The first question is, the questions that the community navigators were asking in terms of facilitation, was each community navigator using the same questions in each meeting?
No, oops, Marcus, if you wanted to jump in on that, I can jump in on the front end of it if you'd like.
No, go ahead, bro.
Yeah, no, we, when we first onboarded each navigator, it was really about the process of how we were facilitating the meeting, which was not specific to the questions, but really letting people kind of dive into discussion about how the golf course could be, you know, what types of changes or things they wanted to see from the golf course and how it could impact their lives, and to really make it personal about what it was that they were experiencing in the community. And so there weren't a set of questions that we went out to ask. And this wasn't a focus group. It was a discussion that we were really attempting to make sure we analyzed the qualitative data from.
Okay, gotcha. And then my second question is related to affordable housing. I know that didn't rank as high as some of the other themes that were brought out in the report, but just wondering in those discussions, if there was framing provided in terms of a definition for affordable, because I know some community members use low income, affordable housing, attainable housing, all of those things being interchangeable. And I'm just curious to know if in conversation, if affordable housing meant some things in one setting and different things in another setting, or excuse me, another conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So affordable housing did end up being mentioned quite a bit, as you can see in the report, of course. But you're right, Evelyn, it wasn't mentioned the same way in every meeting. And there was a lot of different ways that people talked about it, different ways people understood it. And there was no education to what affordable housing meant, or, you know, what type of area median income people were thinking of when they mentioned affordable housing. Most of the time when people mentioned affordable housing, it was really about addressing an economic and housing shortage issue, and also around gentrification and displacement, but not to the specific details of what type of affordable housing was, you know, would help the community, or any consistency around that.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. We'll have two questions left for this section before we keep our meeting moving. Patty and then Pastor Downing.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ross. Yeah, so I think when you showed us the report, and I think the first thing that came up I just saw is 32% of the population is Hispanic or Latinx, which is the highest. And then it's also the less represented in this report at 2%. And I guess my first question was anybody speaking to them in their language, you know, in Spanish? Like, I would probably like to be talked at. And second, I think because they're the highest population, I don't know that this actually, this report, to me, it's almost like, not that it doesn't count, but if I don't see their opinion, then I don't see how we can move forward with this unless we have them represented, in my opinion, because they're the highest population here and they're the ones that we're not talking to. So that was one of my perspectives. Like you said, it's also optional. So maybe they chose not to say that, but I just wanted to know if we did have somebody bilingual talking to them. And then the second, because I don't, I don't want to take too much time later on, but I do kind of feel a little like, I don't know that there's just maybe not enough transparency. And I think like we all see obviously the news and articles and I try to be open-minded on everything, but I just think when there's things that are happening in Park Hill Golf Course, like they're, setting up trees and all of that and just to make it greener. And then in one area, then in my opinion, there's already been a plan to keep that area green, but then the rest is not. And I'm just very confused of like, if there's already a plan and we're just trying to make it better, or maybe like somebody says, checking a box by talking to us, then I just wish there was more transparency by all parties. In that way, it doesn't, I mean, I don't think it's a waste of time, but it would be if there's already a plan and we're just trying to, I'm not sure what we're trying to do here. You know what I mean? And maybe it's just my perspective that there might just not be enough transparency to us. And I don't want to feel used in a way in my community, you know what I mean? So I just wanted to just point that out.
Yeah, I can address that from DMCI's perspective as well too. But on the being able to engage the Hispanic Latinx population, we failed on that, and I was pretty disappointed to see the data there. I would say that there's some unforeseen challenges that happened with some of the management of navigators that promised the ability to do that. But I think in short, it's just really about making sure we do better on that. And I think I get your point there as well, Patty, about, if it's not reflective of the Hispanic and Latinx population that is surrounded around the golf course, it's challenging to say that this is something to really put a lot of weight into. And I get that. I would say, as far as eliminating it, I don't really think that that's something there. I think there's definitely I think ways to go about making sure we do, that is mitigated and fixed. The thing that I would say though too from this is that we've produced something that that does represent some, a subset of voices. It doesn't get everybody's. We should have done better because that was our target. And we have learned from it, even learned fast enough on this to be able to understand, how to deploy that properly in a project that we're doing concurrently in Montbello, where the almost about a third or half of the conversations are being held in Spanish. And that's something that, and going into this, I wish we would have done better on it. And that's just the reflection point that I wanted to be very transparent about through the data and the reflections of this. As far as the second question and point that you made from DMCI's perspective, we are not aware of any plans that are set, and we've been told, of course, that this is the process, the visioning process. So what we've produced here is not a recommendation of anything. There's no conclusion or recommendation that is produced by this. This is essentially just saying this is what people talked about in these meetings. This is what people talked about in these 16 conversations, these 101 one-on-one conversations. That's what was discussed, and that's it. No, it's not saying that this needs to be 100% open space. It's not saying it needs to be 100% developed, and nothing in between, because it's just telling you what was discussed.
Thank you, James. I do feel like your team has done a great job reaching the community. So thank you. I just wanted to point that out.
Oh, thank you so much, Patty. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Pastor Downing, did you still have your question?
Yes, sir. Real quickly, thank you, Dr. Ross. Just want to first to say, James, to you, Marcus, good work. And obviously, there are a lot of constraints during the pandemic, and I can only imagine some of the complications you encountered. And certainly appreciate you being forthright about, wanting to have, accomplish more with it. And I think that takes a lot of vulnerability, and I respect and appreciate that with this group and the broad community members represented here. So appreciate you. And I guess my question is, given some of that, is it possible to relaunch that study to get a more representative sample?
I think that's, like I said earlier, and thank you so much, Eugene, for those comments. I think it's, where does the input go from here, and what are we going after? I think, our main thing when we embarked on really going after this is being able to highlight the community's voice so that we can make sure that the steering committee knows what people are talking about. And that, whatever conversations are being had and with the future of the community at stake, that we would be able to respond to it in ways that have been informed by data and the community's voice, especially those that have not typically been reached. So I think, as we look into the coming months and we see, we do have, another input stage that we need to really drill down on, I think we're gonna see a lot different of an approach for going after community members, as well as how we deploy community navigators and just how everything works. And I'll tell you, we've learned really fast from this project. We're applying it. We're building the plane as we're flying, and I'm actually very proud of this plane that we're flying. It might be janky in some areas, but we're trying to patch it up and keep going.
All right. Thank you. We appreciate that. And so there might be a couple of additional questions that are in the chat. We will make sure that we capture those, and I'll make sure that those questions are given to James and his crew so we can get answers to you. But we're going to keep moving, because I also want to make sure, because to this group, we want to make sure that we keep space for community public comment. And so I want to try to keep us on track, because we only have about 10 minutes for that, and I want to make sure we get there. Noah, do you have a question for James or a comment?
I had a quick question, if that's possible.
Is it? Yeah, let's make it real quick, and then James, try to be as succinct as possible in your answer.
Okay, it's a very quick question. I want to be clear, like, of the 101 conversations, how many were given in Spanish, and 2, when it was identified that there was a huge miss at what point was it clear that there was a huge miss in connecting with the Latinx population, and what steps were taken once that was identified?
Yeah, we actually figured that out pretty late, Noah. And we had a Spanish, 2 people that were Spanish speaking, that identified as Spanish speaking in the Navigator, amongst the Navigators, the 8 that were hired. And I'm not aware of how many conversations were held in Spanish, actually. That might be something to look into the future and really track a lot better and say, okay, was this, we weren't, of course, with the Navigators every time they had a one-on-one conversation, so we're not aware of that. And the one-on-ones, the notes that were provided from those one-on-one conversations were written in English by the Navigators themselves. I will say this though, and I'm gonna stop there since I'm gonna be succinct. My bad. I could have kept on going, but sorry, Dr. Ross.
No, you're good, Noah. Thank you, James and Marcus. Thank you so much. We're gonna move on to the next topic for this evening, which is the draft of it says draft of statistically valid survey results. And what that actually means is we're not going to be talking about results. We're going to be talking about what you want to see in the results. And so we're going to be bringing on Sean from RRC Associates to talk about the methodology, and then we want to open it up to discussion based on the methodology. What comments or questions do you have about methodology? And then what do you really want to see from the data as it's collected? You know, what do you want to learn from it? How do you want it presented? Things of that nature. So Sean, are you ready?
I'm promoting him to panelist right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I believe I just got readmitted. Can you all hear me?
Yes, you're good.
Okay, great. And I'm also joined tonight by Colin Cares. Colin is one of our senior data analysts at our RC. He actually oversaw the tabulation of the data and the creation of those draft slides that you saw. But as you mentioned, Dr. Ross, we will not be reviewing those draft results tonight. We're going to talk primarily about methodology. So at this point, I would like to share my screen. Let's see. All right. So can everybody see my screen? Is my screen visible to everybody?
Yes, you're good to go.
All right, great. All right, now my PowerPoint seems to have frozen up here. Hang on. Oops. All right, sorry about that. So the survey was designed with 24 questions. We vary the format on our questions from yes, no questions, multiple choice, scaled rankings, to create somewhat of a variety and keep people's interest as they go through the survey. The content starts with golf. And some people have asked, well, why did you start with asking about the golf course? The fact is, it's been a golf course for 89 years. Chances are there's nobody taking this survey who remembers it in their lifetime as anything else but a golf course. And this is something that we do nationally in our surveys. When you're talking about changing the use of something that has been literally for almost 100 years, a single use, you start off with that question. So we start with, do you want to keep it a golf course, or are you open to other possibilities? We then broaden the topics to other recreational uses, housing options, commercial retail uses, etc. We ask standard demographic questions that we ask on almost all of our surveys across the country: age, household status, race, etc. The final question in the survey is, tell us anything you want to about your thoughts, your priorities for the future of the Park Hill Golf Course. So that is a completely open-ended question. The survey, the cover letter came in the mailed survey with both English and Spanish versions. The online survey was available both in English and Spanish, and paper Spanish surveys were available upon request. So looking at methodology, distribution and responses for the statistically valid survey. It was mailed to every household within 0.8 miles of the Park Hill Golf Course. And then we wanted to hit a 6,000 mailing target, and there were not 6,000 households within 0.8 miles of the golf course. So we did a random sample of households from 0.8 to 1 mile radius of the golf course. And that brought us up to our total of 6,000 surveys mailed within a mile of the Park Hill Golf Course. We had a really strong response to this survey. We do these surveys nationally for cities and counties across the country. We've done literally hundreds of them for planning and parks and rec and open space and transportation and housing and you name it. Our national average is about 11% in terms of a response. To this survey, we got a 22% response, so double what we normally would expect to get out of a survey. There's obviously a tremendous amount of interest and passion around the Park Hill Golf Course and what happens to the future of it. Our results were weighted by race and age based on the US Census Block data for Park Hill neighborhoods. And Colin can get into a little more detail on that if you choose to in a few minutes. And my screen is frozen again. Apologies. I apologize. The screen does not want to advance. Let me grab my paper notes here. So the open online methodology, this is an entirely separate survey. So in addition to the statistically valid mailed survey that we did to households within a mile, we did an open online survey that was open to all Denver residents. And that gives people who might work near Park Hill or own commercial property or own a business near Park Hill but don't live there, that gives them an opportunity to chime in. It also gives anybody in Denver who has an interest in the Park Hill Golf Course and the repurposing of that site an opportunity to weigh in with their opinions. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of interest from outside of the neighborhoods in this project. We had almost 1,400 completed surveys through April 30th. 57% of those who responded and completed surveys on the open link, the open online survey, did not live near Park Hill Golf Course. So tremendous amount of interest from those who did not or do not live right near the golf course. And I really apologize, my screen is still frozen, so I will. And that sort of wraps up just a really brief summary of our methodologies for the two different surveys that we did. And now we'd like to just get a little feedback from you all on reporting options, research reporting options. We can, you've seen a draft of graphs that show you the weighted results of the survey. And I believe most of those graphs compare the mailed invite survey to the open online survey and show you the differences in results between those two surveys. We can also cross-tabulate specific questions on any variable that you'd want to look at from the neighborhood that those responses came from. We can look at age, we can look at race, we can look at income, we can look at household status, any variable, geographic or demographic that you would like to measure or that you'd like to look at. We can cross-tabulate any question on just about any variable. And as I mentioned earlier, we can also, of course, compare the mailed survey to the open online survey. And that is a really brief synopsis of our methodology and how we arrived at our results. You've already seen some of the draft results, but we'd love to get your feedback tonight in terms of any additional ways you'd like to look at those results in terms of formatting or additional cross tabulations or really anything at all.
All right. Thank you, Sean. So if you've got ideas on how you want to see the data, definitely you can start putting those down in the chat. We can capture it there. And then also, Fred, I seen your hand. Go ahead. We'll try to look at both of those. It's easier for me to see hands, just so you guys know, because the chat moves quickly. And so I may miss a question or a comment in the chat, but we're capturing it. So if it looks like I missed it or didn't see it, just ping me again or use the raise your hand sign. Appreciate it, everyone.
You know, Patty just made a comment that I think is a great summary. She said, I love data, so more the better. And I think the more cross tabulation you can do, and it just enriches our understanding of that data. I, in particular, am representing the Clayton neighborhood, and I believe, the only representative from that neighborhood, although I think there might be a member who works in Northeast Park Hill but lives in Clayton. So I'm particularly interested in seeing what results came out of my neighborhood, because then I can take that back to the RNO body and say, look, here's what our neighbors have said. So I, in particular, appreciate the neighborhood, but the more cross-tabulation, I think it just enriches our understanding of the data. And if there's any information you can give us to help us understand how numbers were adjusted to normalize it against the census data, that might also be helpful, just to help us understand what we're looking at. Thanks.
Thank you, Fred. In the comments, Sean had asked if the data, if the cross tabulation would be, I'm trying to find it again, if it would be public.
It certainly can be. That, I guess that would be up to you all or to city staff to make that decision.
Okay, thank you. Sandy?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, how were these questions formulated? In particular, we have concerns, my organization has concerns about question number 3, which very specifically asked about whether or not you wanted a golf course and or development, I believe was the question. In fact, let me just clarify exactly. It says, which statement do you agree with? Keep the Park Hill Golf Course site as 100% golf course. Use the site to provide a variety of open space, recreation, and other community serving uses. So out of curiosity, why was there not an option for open space versus just specifically a golf course? So I'm just curious, who formulated these questions? Who was it that gave your particular organizations the questions to put on the survey?
We formulated the questions in partnership with the city staff. In terms of that particular question, as I mentioned in my remarks, it's been a golf course since 1930. Literally for 89 years, it was a golf course. That's all anybody remembers it as. So whether it was a golf course or softball fields or open space, whatever it's always been in the memory of any living person. In an example like this, where it's always been a single use for anybody's lifetime or anybody's memory of their lifetime, that is just a logical place to ask. We were definitely not trying to bias the survey, like to get people to say it should be a golf course. It was just the fact that that's what it's always been. So it wouldn't have mattered if it had always been open space. We would have asked it that way. If it had always been softball fields or basketball courts or something else, we would have asked it that way, but it happens to have always been a golf course.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chanel? Chanel?
Oh, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
Hi, how's everybody doing this evening? So I just want to, say a little comment about the golf course in general. I've been a Park Hill resident all my life, and I won't even say my age or my life, but what I want to know is, what has the golf course accomplished in the past 5, 10, 15 years? I mean, I personally hosted parties at the clubhouse, but outside of that, it's done nothing to prevent gentrification that has already happened. And the fact of the matter that we have, I mean, everybody has an opinion, right? But the fact of the matter that people still want open space, my question to them is how this open space that will remain will assist in the facilitation of not preventing gentrification.
Right.
Or their thoughts on that.
Thank you for that question, Chanel. We'll definitely get to a place where we're discussing some of those questions. Are there any other thoughts about the methodology or how you want to see this data presented? Okay, so if anybody else has any other thoughts on other things that other information that you want to see pulled from the data, or any other ways you want to see it displayed, go ahead and put that in the chat. And we'll make sure that that information gets captured. We're gonna move forward and go into our community, our public comment. Want to make sure that we have time to get to everybody there. Imam, I see your hand. I'm gonna come back to you. There's a couple questions that hopefully we'll be able to come back to after we get through public comment. So save your question for me, and I'm gonna come back to you, and then also David. We'll be coming back to you before we go to the next session after public comment. So at this time, public comment, we have individuals who have registered. It looks like Courtney put the public comment information in the chat. What's going to happen is we'll call your name. You will have up to 2 minutes to give your comment. You will be we'll call your name in the order that it was received. Once you hear your name, you'll be able to unmute yourself and unmute yourself and use your camera to come on and ask your question. The goal is to we're going to get to as many questions as we can during the allotted time for public comment. And if we don't get to your question, your question will be automatically, your name will be automatically added to the next meeting. So you have the opportunity to ask that question. So just go to the public comment. We'll put it back in the chat one more time, Courtney, if you could do that. But the public comment process, so you have access to that. And then we're going to jump right into our public comment here. The first comment we have is Tashaka King. So Tashaka, we're going to get you queued up to go here real quick.
And he should be promoted to a panelist right now. And I'm asking him to unmute, and I don't see that he is unmuting.
All right. Tashaka, if you're there, please unmute. We'll give you a second here. We may have lost you, so a few seconds here. We'll move on to the next person. One more time for Tashaka King. All right, thank you. We'll try to catch him at the end. Maybe he stepped off for a second. Next up, we have Sammy Burnett.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
We have you loud and clear. Thank you. Floor is yours.
Okay. Okay, so I chose to speak today because I am a long-term resident of Park Hill. The home I live in has been owned by my family since the 80s. I'm a third-generation Park Hill resident, and I actually live 2 blocks away from the west border of the golf course. And I actually face the Dahlia, what used to be known as the Dahlia Shopping Center. So after years of being disenfranchised generationally, not just me, but generationally, from what happened with the Dahlia Shopping Center, the development with the Holly, I've seen with my own eyes for the last 40 plus years, there hasn't been much going on for the needs in the community. So with that being said, I think I do want to see more services, more fresh food and healthy food. We do need that. But I'm not averse to using the space as park space as well. I think because the land is large enough, there is ample opportunity for both. There is no reason why we can't have both and have some balance, because there's enough park space for whatever we imagine. And I think the residents of this area should have a strong voice and should have a strong say in what happens to the land. And I hope that we can all encourage people who live over here and live in the surrounding areas, that we all can peacefully come to an agreement that yes, both sides can have what we want. It doesn't have to be explicitly one or the other, no development or all development. I think West Side has made it very clear that that is what they are hoping to accomplish. So everybody can have a piece of the pie at this point. Everyone can have exactly
We're
what
at
they're
time.
asking for.
All right, time. Thank you so much, Sammy.
Mhm.
Next up, we have Dane Washington.
Hello, everybody. I guess, I just have a few things that, I kind of have some concerns or just questions about. I've, personally talked to residents in Northeast Park Hill that don't really know much about this development process and what's going on. I know that DMCI has been doing some work to try to get out and hear some of those voices, but I guess, some of the concerns that people that I hear from are just afraid that, regardless of what happens, the politics that are involved in some of this is kind of muddy in the waters. And so I think just kind of curious as to even, some of the details of conversation with folks are, I put in the chat a second ago about how, or just want some, I guess, some clarity on how, like, even some of this process is going to affect the Elyria Swansea area and how they're actually having their voice at the table when, again, there's residents in particular in this part of the community that have not even been invited to the table for a conversation. So just kind of wondering what are those processes and how, I know, again, DMCI is doing some work with trying to get out and engage community, but just trying to make sure that, those folks and residents of Northeast Park Hill are heard over some of these other people at the table. Not to say that everybody at the table doesn't need to be heard from, but just wondering if we're really being intentional about, bringing that conversation to light for those residents versus other people in different communities.
Thank you. Next up, we have Robert Greer.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to speak. So I've seen a lot of gentrification in this area, and that's something that I'm really worried about. So, I understand that there are plans to put housing development here, but I'm a little concerned that the process does not seem to be necessarily as geared toward affordable housing as much as I would like. I do think that there's a lot of space there for quality open space, more quality than the current golf course, as well as desperately needed affordable housing. A lot of people in that neighborhood who grew up there, they have no hope of buying a home in that area now because the demand is so far outstripped the supply. But I share a lot of the concerns that the private market and the West Side developer is not necessarily geared toward or interested in creating enough affordable housing to really meet the need. So that's kind of what I wanted to contribute to the conversation. I think that there's an opportunity to make this space a true commons rather than something that has a bunch of dollar signs on it. And that's what I would like to say. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Robert. Karen Kropa.
Yes, good evening. I'm a 19-year resident of the Park Hill area. I live a block off the Park Hill Golf Course. I would really love to see a multi-use area similar to Lowry or Central Park or Northfield. It's something that would be really great for our community. It would be great for the people that live here to have services, places to go to grocery stores, to have restaurants that we can go to. Also, I think it would be a great opportunity for people that live in the community to be able to be employed there. Another issue is instead of having a golf course in perpetuity, which brings very little tax dollars to the city and county of Denver, having multi-use gives our city and state tax dollars. in the form of sales tax and also property taxes. I think this is something that needs to happen in a community that has really been, as has been said before, a desert of services for the people who live here and around the area that we live in.
Thank you so much, Karen. Tashaka King.
Hi everyone, how you doing? Thank you, Dr. Ross, for this platform. As I just ride by the Park Hill Golf Course right now, I see a space of opportunity for the community to grow together. Like everyone said, we would love to see this open space be utilized in a way that's gonna not only service our young community, but it services our elderly community as well. You know, so just having places where families can go, like the Mendon Roots Project did the tree planting project in the golf course to plant more trees, just to bring some more liveliness to the neighborhood instead of just buildings. You know, of course, we would love to have grocery stores, places where we can, you know, eat good, places that we can go and sit as a family and just see the city as it is. So yeah, we need to get this started.
Thank you. Amy Harris.
Hey everyone, I live in Northeast Park Hill, so that's why I'm attending these meetings because I'm right there. And I just wanted to say that, you know, it's really unfortunate how much this issue has divided this community. And I really don't think that the community is apart from each other as it seems like in terms of what we want for the future of Northeast Park Hill and for the neighborhoods, the other neighborhoods that are impacted by the Park Hill Golf Course land. Because it is true that other areas like Clayton and like Global area Swansea and all these areas are impacted by the land. And what's I think unfortunate is that everything is just is attached to just the Park Hill Golf Course land, that there's no consideration for like a neighborhood plan. I think if we were to approach things in a bigger way to say, okay, where could there be incentives for development or redevelopment in all areas of our neighborhood, then I think we'd be a lot more closely aligned. Because I think that for the most part, what I'm hearing when I'm talking to my neighbors is not that anyone is opposed to development and, you know, offering more retail and more housing and all that kind of stuff. It's the sacrifice of the open space that's the problem. It's like, why should we have to be given that choice? Why do we have to be given that choice if you can either have this big open space or you can have housing? And to say that the land can support both, I disagree with. I mean, when you talk about parks, like I live right near Axon Park and it's great, but it's not the kind of park where you can go and like jog around, you know, you can walk across the whole thing in 5 minutes. So having like a big area, like a wash park, like a Cheeseman, something that is not only going to be able to host that open space, but also be able to host other recreational uses like swimming pool and splash park and ball fields and all that other stuff. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about having all of those acres dedicated to open space. And then it's, well, then look around and see what other opportunities we have. I just don't think we should be closed off to thinking about that. And that's why I'm really disturbed by that survey saying, do you want this to be 100% a golf course or do you want it to be mixed use development? When you start off the survey that way, you are driving to a conclusion that some of the land will be developed. And that's, it's biased, frankly. And it's not, I don't think it's a balanced way of actually getting the heart and the soul of the neighborhood. So neighbors, I think we agree more than we think.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Laura Leckband.
Hello. Thank you for letting me speak today. I appreciate it. I live in Northeast Park Hill, also across from City of Axon Park. Hi, Amy. And I'm a very recent resident of the city. I moved here about 1.5 years ago, just before the pandemic. And I specifically moved to Northeast Park Hill after researching the whole city because I wanted my children to go to a diverse high school. I wanted to live in a diverse neighborhood, and I wanted to live across from a park. And I got all of those things by coming to Northeast Park Hill. I am not, the future of the golf course is important to me because I'm only 2 blocks from it. But I would like to see the space become something that adds real value and livability to the community, not just to people who play golf, especially with a beautiful course less than a mile away and a huge 460-acre city park available. I rent my current home because I have no choice. Purchasing a home in the area is a casino-like gamble in which you must be prepared to pay cash way over the already inflated price of the home. Denver has experienced exponential growth and must be prepared to provide the kind of mixed-use recreational retail housing development that will support greater density along with carefully planned green spaces, and I support this. I would request mixed-use housing types supporting open-air restaurants, retail, lighted basketball and tennis courts, and an outdoor pool. I'd also love to have a better dog park, thank you. A splash park, and an outdoor skating rink. Or any combination of all of those cool things that will bring the community together. In short, a live, work, play area designed to preserve the existing trees. We need the trees. And make a fully occupied and active space that we can all enjoy.
Thank you so much, Laura. We appreciate your comments. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Adam Estroff.
I didn't see him on the attendees list, nor did I see Kevin Matthews. I did promote the next one, Dr. Michael Kosnet.
Dr. Kosnet.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Got you loud and clear.
Thank you. I've been a resident of Park Hill for 27 years. I'm a physician specializing in medical toxicology and environmental and occupational health. First, I'd like to thank DMC Impact for the presentation of its report, and I'd like to offer a constructive criticism. It's surprising that the methodology of the report apparently provided no information regarding how the participants in the one-to-one interviews and the community talks were identified, recruited, or selected. When any opinion survey or analysis fails to provide specific and detailed information on this crucial aspects of methodology, it's not possible to assess the extent to which bias, such as selection bias or inclusion bias, was managed or mitigated. Regrettably, the lack of such information in the DMC Impact Report, as it's currently written, limits its utility in the formulation of public policy. And hopefully this can be addressed in future drafts. Turning now to the public health impacts of the future of the former Park Hill Golf Course, I want to offer 2 brief comments. First, from a clinical health point, the optimal contribution of the site, the optimal contribution that the site can offer to the city and the community is as open space and parkland for exercise and recreation. I say this because Denver, like many other cities across the country, suffered from undesirable rates of heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. Exercise and recreation is fundamental to addressing these health concerns. The more nearby parkland that is available, the greater it is utilized by the community for exercise and recreation. Second, from an environmental health impact, the area in and around the former Park Hill Golf Course has been found to periodically have high levels of air pollutants, such as oxides of nitrogen and ozone. These contribute to respiratory diseases, including asthma. Increased residential and commercial development in the former Park Hill Golf Course, along with the traffic it would engender, would serve to increase, not decrease, these environmental health concerns. Open space and parkland and not development.
Time.
All right, thank you,
greatest
Doc.
chance
Thank you,
of
Doctor.
addressing these issues. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Do we have Dimitri?
I did not see Dimitri in the attendees list. I did promote Woody.
Okay. Woody, the floor is yours.
Hi, my name is Woody Garnsey and lived in Park Hill for almost 50 years. First of all, with all due respect to Dr. Ryan, I submit that his involvement in the real estate development business with 5 Points Development Corporation and his business and personal relationships with Norman Harris, who is part of Westside's development teams, disqualify him from serving as a neutral facilitator in this planning and development process. At the very least, this is an appearance of a conflict of interest. Basically, I challenge the appropriateness of this whole entire planning and development process that is requiring expenditures of at least 300,000 taxpayer dollars to date, and at least an estimated 1,300 hours of planning time. The process ignores the conservation easement that protects the land from development and that cannot be legally terminated, extinguished, released, or abandoned without a court order pursuant to the Colorado Conservation Easement Statute that governs the easement. The development would require a prior court order based on changed conditions on or surrounding the land that it has become impossible to fulfill the open space and recreational conservation purposes of the easement. Nothing on the apparent agenda for this planning process remotely addresses facts that might prove that based on changed conditions on or surrounding the land, it has now become impossible to fulfill these open space and recreational conservation purposes. This planning and development process improperly puts the cart before the horse and wastes significant time and money. SOS Denver has submitted 3 detailed letters to the mayor and his administration, including the planning director, Laurel Aldretti, raising important issues about the planning and development process. I strenuously object to the fact that we have never received any substantive response to any of these important letters, and that the planning department has failed to share these letters with the steering committee.
You're at time, Woody. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Next up, we have Dr. Lisa Calderon.
Hi, can you hear me?
Got you loud and clear.
Thank you. I have a choppy connection because I'm actually out enjoying open space. It's essential to my physical and mental health. And I also want to thank you all for opening up the chat and the public comment. It's something that as the Chief of Staff for Councilwoman Candy Sedabaca, we have been pushing for more community engagement, transparency in this process. And it's a shame that I have to sign up for public comment for our office to have input into this process. The other hat that I'm wearing is as the Councilwoman's representative on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. And our outreach committee has a number of concerns. First and foremost, felt that the survey is extremely biased. As someone with a doctorate, the methodology is shoddy at best. And also the Denver 7 will be running a story tonight at 10 around really the survey being a push poll. So I encourage folks to tune in for that. The other concern was the lack of transparency in creating the survey. Our office had to actually have a meeting with Laura Aldrade and Happy Haynes to find out that there was no stakeholder input in creating the survey or the questions. And also, why did we choose a firm in Boulder, a white firm, I might add, when we're talking so much about equity and inclusion? And perhaps if they actually were a firm from Denver, they would understand that having a binary question of a golf course or development was a setup for everybody, rather than tracking the open space controversy tells us that's a problem, and we still don't know the cost for that firm. The other concern was historical, the presentations that were given by past presenters who also have a conflict of interest, but there was no background around the conservation easement, and also the lack of GES and the Latinx community is unconscionable in this. It's unacceptable. And so there are some specific recommendations, including disregard the survey results due to perceptions of pro-development bias and lack of stakeholder input in its development, and instead create a new survey.
You just hit your time, Dr. Calderon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Michaela Ortega. Is Michaela on?
I've promoted her and asked her to unmute. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on.
All right. Let's give her one more second here. See if we can see if there's.
She's unmuted.
Okay, Michaela, the floor is yours. Well, it looks like we don't have Michaela Ortega. And so if you're Michaela, we're going to forward your name to the comment period at the next meeting, just in case you're having technical difficulty. And sorry that we couldn't get to you. So that's what we'll do. And hopefully everything is okay. Just want to say thank you to everybody who made public comment. I went ahead and increased our time so we could try to get through everybody who was on the list. So we had 14 people signed up. We had, I think, 10 people here. And so we were able to hear from all 10 people. We've got about 10 minutes left. And the last thing, or the last two things on our agenda, one was to kind of look at the chartering acknowledgement, and then just kind of some next steps. But we also have two questions that weren't answered earlier, and so I want to come back and do two things. One, we're gonna go back to the question that David had. And Imam, I thought your hand was up for a question, but it wasn't your hand. But if you do have a question regarding the presentation, we'll take that at this time. So we'll do David's question, and then we'll move towards just kind of next steps and getting us adjourned at 7:30. That sound okay? All right. So David, let's come to you first. You had a question in the comment section.
Yeah, kind of actually had two, but I'll focus. It was the first one was actually I'd said the report, and I was talking to the report from the Community Navigator report, that it had indicated that there were 2 disqualified outreach events essentially. And I know James Roy had indicated that they wouldn't disclose whose those were, but my question was more pointed in that what was the reason for the disqualification? And although the data from that disqualification is not part of the report, is there a record available of the data that was unused? And my point is knowing what was discarded is just as important as knowing what was kept. I mean, you might not be able to use it, but what did you throw away?
Great, thank you. James, are you available? Are you able to answer that question for us at this time?
I'm still here. My kids were distracting me for a second. I didn't hear the question. I apologize.
So the question was, although you can't disclose the navigators who caused the not using certain data, can you share what actually went wrong and what the data was that was pulled out?
Yeah, so the meetings were not facilitated the way that we talked about, and had guest speakers at them that were in support of, in support of, I guess, one side of the equation on, as far as like the polarizedness goes of this circumstance.
All right, and then was the data still collected? And if so, is there opportunity to still see it?
The data was collected, but we did not go into analyzing it deeply. And so it is not usable. And so it's something we just did not use.
All right, thank you. Patty, is your hand up or has it just been up?
It was up. Sorry, I was just going to talk about the presentation that Sean Mayer made. I'm really interested in looking at the data and maybe like in a dashboard type of place or something. I think it will help us, to learn more about what people are thinking. So I don't know, just easy to read, and maybe we can play with it, and maybe tabs. I don't know if like a Google Doc or something might be helpful. I don't know. Just wanted to put it out there.
Thank you. We're right about 7:25. We got a few moments left. So there's a couple of things that I want to do. So first, going into the chartering acknowledgement piece, that was the kind of the next step in the work that you guys were going to be doing together. The reality is you guys are a committee of community members, and the chartering acknowledgement is more of a city form and a city process. And so I don't think that that's necessarily the best way to capture your voice in creating an agreement. And based on the comments that were sent to Dr. Tyler Pryor and the lack of response to that first template, we're going to take us through a process where you create your working agreement, right? It's really not a charter. It's more of a working agreement that's, that demonstrates how we work together. So I'm going to show my screen very quickly. Give me 1 second here. Can everybody see my screen? Okay. So what we're going to do moving forward as we kind of get into this work is you guys are going to create your guiding principles on how it is that you work together. And so what you have here in front of you is a framework to get us started. In each section, you'll have an opportunity to add or take away from the area, from each area. But ultimately, what this will do is create our, your working agreement on how, your working agreement, as we move forward to do this work. And really it's about having, understanding your values and guiding principles as a collective. And so the first sections that we'll start focusing on are your values and guiding principles, right? So in order to do this work together, in order to produce the outcome that's been asked of you, what do you need to do, right? What do you need to do to show up to get to the point that there's recommendations? To do that, what do you need to do to ensure the safety and culture of this group, right? What do you need to do to protect the purpose? And you guys will get this via email. What do we need to do to eliminate harm? How do we honor the lived experiences of everyone who's involved in this process? How do we engage with grace and empathy? And how do we ensure that we're using an equity lens in this conversation? And so we'll have the opportunity to kind of go through and you will answer these questions to help create your guiding principles. In addition to that, there may be other things that aren't here that you'll add, but this will be you formulating this working agreement for the group, right? And then we'll move through each step. In order to do this work moving forward, we'll probably use a technology tool called Miro. So some of the work can be done while we're in our meeting working, but it'll be visible because we can't really go into breakout groups. But you'll be able to engage with the technology live, just like the screen is showing, and it'll be transparent for everyone to see that work. And so as homework, you're going to get this slide, and we want you to start thinking about it. And you'll also get a link to Miro to play with it and see how it works. So that way, when we come together for our next meeting, we'll be able to start the work that we need to do to move forward. The last thing that we want to talk about is the schedule. So the next meeting is scheduled for June 8th, 5:30 p.m. But in July, we won't be able to have a meeting, unfortunately, because of the holiday. And then scheduling before being able to join you guys. I've already had an extended time away. I'll be in Africa, so I won't be able to be here. And so the question is do you guys want to have 2 meetings in June? So to meet on June 8th and then also June 29th, or would you just prefer to meet June 8th and just reconvene in August? And so that's 2 questions that we want you to consider, and we'll send out kind of a doodle poll and capture that information. So moving forward, some of the work for you guys is really going to get started. You've been listening to a lot, hearing a lot, receiving a lot. The other piece is we'll also make sure that there is public comment at each meeting, so that way we can continue to be transparent and continue to hear the voice of the community. And so again, thank you to everybody from the community who was able to be here tonight. So you'll get the doodle poll, but be thinking about these things. You'll get an email with the slides, so that'll, a little bit of homework in between, but we'll be able to share all that information. And again, I want to say thank you so much. We're right at 7:30. Want to be respectful of your time. It was a pleasure to be with you tonight, and I look forward to doing this work with you. And we will go from there. And so we are going to adjourn right at 7:30. I'm going to hang out for a few more moments just in case anybody has any additional questions for me, but we're going to adjourn our meeting for this evening. So again, thank you to all of our presenters. Thank you to all of you on the steering committee, and thank you, community, so much for being here. We really, really appreciate you.
Thank you, Dr. Ross.
You guys have a great evening, and I'll hang around for a second.
Dr. Ross.